Good evening, fellow commissioners. I want to thank you for coming this evening. And I'd like to call to order the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission teleconference meeting for July 23rd, 2020. All right, we'll do roll call.
Okay. Doug Bruce. Sam DeSoler.
Present.
Susan Dyer.
Here.
Jeff Golden.
Here.
Deb Hutton. Yep, I see Deb. Lee Sandweiss. John Saunders.
Here.
Chris Sturbaum.
Here.
Duncan Campbell. Ernesto Castaneda.
Here.
Derek Ritchie. Jenny Southern.
Here.
Okay.
All right. We need approval of the minutes from our last meeting, June 25th.
So approved.
Did I get a second?
Sam DeSoler, second.
Okay. Who made the motion?
Deb. Hutton.
Deb, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie.
All right. Sam DeSoler.
Yes.
Susan Dyer.
Abstain.
Jeff Golden.
Yes.
Deb Hutton.
Yes.
John Saunders.
Yes.
Chris Sturbaum.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0-1.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to COAs, and we'll do the staff review, which is COA-2024-122 West 6th Street.
So this project was actually talked about at the previous HPC meeting, and I told everybody, I had to get in contact with the builder and the property owner. I did, and I found out the scope of work that was happening to this building. We were kind of unsure, but essentially all they're doing is replacing the storefront windows with new tempered insulated glass just to fit the old dimensions. Nothing's changed in there. They removed a layer of fascia board, actually 2 layers. One, the most outermost layer was plywood. Then there was a layer of like fiber cement board beneath that. They got rid of both those layers and they put a brand new layer of plywood painted black. So I was able to staff approve that. The sign is going to be at the next meeting. We'll have to approve the sign. That's coming next, but I just wanted to show you that one. So
Great. Thank you, Connor. All right, so we're going to move on to commission review.
I have a quick question about the last one.
Yes, Sam.
Connor, did you actually determine that the material used was fiber cement because it looked like it was 1 inch thick and it looked like some kind of sandstone or limestone?
yeah, I didn't determine. I took the contractor at his word. I looked into, fiber cement board, and it's been used for a while, or at least product similar to that, right? I wasn't sure exactly what the product is, but essentially at that stage, Sam, when it was brought to our attention, they already chunked off a lot of it. So it was kind of a moot point, I guess, at that degree, unless we wanted to, do some kind of retroactive fining or something like to that nature. But I didn't really feel that the layer of fascia board, which was beneath the exterior layer, was really worth, getting in a big fight about. So I decided to staff approve it.
I hear that. I would like them to give them a warning that we want them to submit drawings for what they're planning on putting back for the signage and any of the infill.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Sam. All
Quick
right.
question, is there a master volume control? It's a little, I don't know if it's dim for everybody, but it's a little dim for me.
Anybody else? Do you have any trouble hearing us?
I can hear it, it's just very, kind of soft.
It is at a little bit low.
Okay. I don't know how to adjust that. We just have the microphone on the computer.
I'll try to
think-
talk louder.
I think you're fine. I think maybe the people who can't hear, crank up your volume, max it out.
I have, but that's okay.
Okay. All right. COA 20-23, 2431 North Barber Drive, Matlock Heights, Historic District. Petitioner is Sam. All right. Connor, give us that presentation.
So this is a contributing ranch style structure in the Matlock Heights Historic District. The request is to remove a non-original rear deck and roof and replace with a new wood deck and a butterfly style roof. In addition to that, the request is to build an artist quarters, which consists of an ADU and a studio that's combined into one detached building. That'll be in the backyard. The studio portion, I'll show you here. Here's the current wood porch that will be removed. This is a rendering of the ADU. Both the studio and the artist quarters will feature fiber cement panel siding, vinyl insulated windows. One of them will have one will be a flat rubber membrane roof, flat, and the other will have a slope to it. I'll let Sam go into all the details. I just want to continue on with this. So if you look at the district's design guidelines, the standards for size and lot placement say that the structure needs to be subordinate to the primary structure in height and size and located to the rear of the primary building. So this checks off those. The fenestration pattern on the ADU follows other ranch style patterns in the neighborhood. You can see here with kind of the thin clear story like windows, and this this kind of looks like a picture window, but it's going to be an operable like garage type door. So it is compatible with the neighborhood fenestration. Now the pattern formed by the cement panel siding on the ADU, you can see here, it's really unfamiliar in the district, where predominantly natural materials such as limestone, brick, and wood are used for the exterior siding. However, the guidelines do state that the material should be compatible, but not required to match the primary structure. Also, the flat and shed style roofs on the ADU are both recommended roof shapes in the guidelines. The proposed butterfly porch roof does not follow any of the noted examples in the design guidelines for ranch style homes. However, this is one of the recommended shapes, roof shapes that you see in the guidelines. So it's not completely outside the realm of compatibility there. The design and choice of materials for both the porch and the ADU are distinct from the architectural fabric of the neighborhood. It's pretty obvious. However, I would say it's important to be mindful that the design and style of the homes in Matlock Heights really were a departure from the tradition at the time they were built. And in this way, this proposed project kind of keeps some of that same forward-looking spirit, experimental use of form, and that really differentiates Matlock Heights from other historic districts in Bloomington. I also want to note that the Neighborhood Design Review Committee unanimously supported the project. So the staff recommendation for this would be approval due to the project meeting guideline standards for size, lot placement, fenestration, and roof shape, as well as having neighborhood support.
Great. Okay, Sam, would you like to add, please?
I think the main things I'd like to add were that we tried to, the roof slope of the shed roof portion and also the roof slope of the porch portion are identical to what is on the existing house. They're all 3 12s. And what we're trying to do on the porch that abuts the existing house, there's a rather unfortunate porch that was put on originally. I don't know if you've got a photograph of that, Connor. Yeah, there you go, on the lower right, where the rafters were just sort of slapped up on top of the existing roof. We're proposing to take all of that out and retain. You can't quite see it in that photograph, but there's about a 2-foot high original limestone wall that surrounds it. We're going to leave that all in and put in basically a platform that matches the interior elevation of the house. And then the butterfly is matching the existing slope and materials of the interior, or not the interior, the existing roof, just sort of mirroring that. The studio and we're sort of combining a studio and accessory dwelling unit in one building in the backyard. And there's a flat roof on the studio, which is the big sort of cubic portion on the left there. And then the artist building is on the right, which matches the roof slope of the existing house. So we're trying to, what we'd really like to do if we can do it is with fiber cement, if we can get unpainted panels, eventually they, they look like limestone. They're the closest thing we've been able to find that matches a limestone. And so we're trying to get as close as we can to the existing materials without, going too crazy because we're on a budget here. But it's a building that's totally separate from and fronts the street. If you look at the picture on the go back. One more. There you go. If you look at the picture on the right, it's pretty well screened behind existing trees, and we're going to leave all that in place. But it's kind of a backyard building. It's like a sort of a glorified backyard shed. But it's a really fun project to work on, and the clients are lovely people, and I think they're here. And if they have any additional comments, I'm pleased to answer any questions and hear what they also have to say.
Terrific, thanks, Sam. So, Chris, have you got some questions?
No,
No questions? Okay. Jeff?
No questions.
Susan?
Nope, no questions.
Oh, sorry, Sam. Ernesto?
No questions, thank you.
Jenny?
No, I guess not. Well, I have comments later.
Okay. Do we
I have a question.
Anybody else join us?
Yeah, Deb. I have a question. Sam, on the west side of the studio, I'm looking at what is that on the west side of the square studio wall? Facing south? No, facing the other house down the road, down Glendora. What is that in the upper level? No, next picture. Yeah, on that picture. Thank you very much. So on the far left, what is that thing there?
So the roof it's a parapet roof, which means there's a little wall that hides most of the roof, like you have in the buildings on the downtown square. But it's got a low slope to it, about an inch, half inch per foot. So there's a slot that goes along that entire top of the wall to let the water out. And then there's a gutter and a downspout that catches the water.
Oh, I see, on the roadside. Okay.
Yep.
So you just have one slot in the whole square of the, all four walls, but one slot with the downslope.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it clean, and that's the current plan. If the engineer is friendly, that's what'll happen.
Great, thank you. Oh, I have another question. The ADU is, an ADU in this city is considered just the living quarters, is that right?
That's my understanding.
So because you're attaching the studio to it and making it, what, 900 plus square feet instead of 400 plus square feet, that doesn't, because they're attached, have a common wall, that doesn't change things in terms of the city's requirements for an ADU or
We have
back.
Keegan is with us. He's in the planning department. Keegan, can you answer that?
Thank you.
Sure. So it looked like, didn't it say that the maximum size, or that the size was about 650 square feet? Or
Yeah.
was that, yeah, well, but yeah, I guess to answer your question, yeah, we would only consider the part that is living space to be the ADU. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Terrific. Any more questions, Deb? Okay, let's move on to comments. Chris?
I think it'll be fine in this neighborhood.
Okay. Jeff?
Yeah, I agree. I think I like the design. I think Sam's done a good job of putting it the right place on the site. Interestingly enough, I just appraised this house within the last week, and that porch is very unfortunate. So I think that'll be a huge improvement. So I'm in favor of this whole project.
Great. Deb, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think Sammy did a great job of taking the way the property is laid out and then adjusting to the Matlock Heights norms of construction. From the point of view of a neighbor who lives in the area, the strip of windows above the ADU door, which face onto the backyard, so we won't see it very much, is great looking, and it fits right into the neighborhood. And on the backside or the Glendora side, all you have is two little bitty windows, I think on the backside of the of only the studio. And I would love to see more. See just those two little holes and then the two little windows upper left of the ADU. So I like that stream of windows and would love to see one of those streams on one or the other, just because so that's part of what the public will see. And it is totally representative of many of the window sets in the building. So that's just a personal comment that I would love to see us one of those strips on one part or the other of the two buildings. But that's just a pure comment. I love what you've done. So great job.
Thank you. We had that on the more expensive version.
Susan?
I like it. I think it's a fun design. I don't have any other comments.
Sam? No, just kidding.
Yeah.
No, it's great. Approve it.
I'd add the public realm. I like the idea of squeezing a couple more windows in if the budget allows.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. Ernesto?
Yeah, just it looks great. Looks great, Sam.
Okay. And Jenny?
I was wondering if there's a possibility, if you don't squeeze in more windows, can you move it, turn it so that you can actually see that great frontage from Glendora instead of a blank wall?
See which from Glendora?
The south side?
Yeah, not totally turn the thing around, but just turn it like 90 degrees. So that the front of the studio and stuff faces the back of the house. Yeah.
So part of the placement of the building, or at least a big part of the placement of the building, if you see the site falls from the sort of east is the high and the west is the low, and because the owner would like a fairly high ceiling because he does large pieces, he's a photographer, so making the large, the higher portion of the studio as far away from the house as possible, down the hill, that was a piece of it. Turning it 90 degrees, you could do that, but I think the other thing that I was looking at is a more sort of urban thing of holding the street wall. And so if you turned it 90 degrees so it was facing the house, it's less of holding the wall and more of a plot sculpture, as you will. So that's kind of why it happened that way. I think the other thing that we were thinking about is drainage. And if you do turn it 90 degrees, you're basically forming a dam at the bottom of the yard where all the water will go in and basically sort of go right in the front door of the studio. And so we're trying to avoid that as well.
Then could you reverse maybe the shed roof so that you have more breakup on the side, on the side that's to the road?
You could do that, but the shed roof is placed that way because of solar gain. And a lot of artist studios, you want the north light as much as you can get. So if you reverse the shed roof, you're talking about a lot of solar gain and you're losing the north light. So again, it's sort of,
Well, I thought that part was the living quarters.
So I don't understand your question.
Where you have,
Jenny, am I interpreting really that you're suggesting just the ADU part be turned 90 degrees, not the whole structure?
Well, you can just the slant of the roof, instead of having your two high walls to the street, have your block size and then have your slant so that you have it broken up a minute. So the low side of the ADU has a low side towards the street, and then you have the high side, you can put your doors and stuff in there, but put it on the other side towards the yard.
I think that my earlier comments still hold true, in that if you put the high side toward the yard, that gives you more solar exposure. And we're
Okay.
trying to avoid that and trying to be as energy conscious and light conscious as possible.
Okay, so that's facing south?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little, since there's curvy streets there, it's a little hard for me to go exactly who's east, west, north, south on there. Okay, I just thought the big trees would have kept it from doing that. You've got a huge line of trees between the ADU and the street. So I would have thought that would shade the roof.
That's true, but they're all to the north, so it's not going to help you.
I see. Okay, thanks. That was my comments.
Okay, my comment is I like what you've done, Sam. I think how you place the building on the property is perfect, especially for an artist, as you're indicating, about getting that natural light in there and doing the things that you want to accomplish. So I think you've done an awesome job with this. Thank you. So we need a motion to approve.
Move to approve COA 20-23.
Happy
I
to
just want to let John know I am here, John. This is Derek.
Derek, see you up there.
I have no comment, though. I just want to let you know I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a second?
second.
All right. Eddie, you want to do roll call?
You want to kick me out?
No, there was no discussion. It was just a motion to approve, so.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Sam DeSoler,
Abstain.
Susan Dyer,
Yes.
Jeff Golden,
Yes.
Deb Hutton,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Chris Sturbaum.
Yes, with a wish for a couple windows.
Motion carries 501.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to COA 20-25, 629 South Woodlawn. Are the petitioner? Yeah, the petitioners are with us. Great.
So this is located in the Elm Heights Historic District. We're talking about this garage structure to the rear of this house. This was actually staff approved for COA 2019 back in May. That staff approval had to do with really just rehabilitation of the structure for the most part and the replacement of, I think, 2 or 3 windows. However, the property owner has approached me and is now asking to remove the barn door on the north elevation of the structure and frame a new wall that'll be clad with siding matching the rest of the structure. So essentially just frame over this and make it look like a wall. Reading the Elm Heights design guidelines, the goal is to retain and restore original garages and service buildings along with their inherent material and features through cleaning, repair, and routine maintenance. Staff comments are that the guidelines don't really offer a whole lot of suggestions on alterations to these garages and service buildings. While staff agrees with the petitioner that the doors themselves may not be original to this garage, the opening certainly is, and the removal of these large doors and essentially just siding over them will forfeit the structure's appearance as a garage. And detached garages along alleys are a feature of the district, are mentioned in the guidelines. So staff would support replacement of these doors if they're non-original and in poor condition. However, staff does not support removal of the opening itself and siding over that. So staff would recommend denial of COA 2025.
Thank you, Connor. Okay, is petitioner with us?
Where's the other door to this garage?
That's it. No, it's right here.
Oh, people door. So it's turning it into a shed, right?
Right.
Correct.
Right. What if they
Yes.
made it solid, but framed it to ghost an old door?
That
You
was
know,
one of
filled
the,
the wall in, left the frame, made a frame on that plywood that ghosts a door so it reads as a door. Like, who cares if it opens if you read it?
Chris, we're doing questions.
I didn't hear the question.
You were asking the question.
Yeah, what if we did that? That's my question. Could we do that instead? And what would staff think of that option to everybody gets something that way and
yeah, that's
have to
something
keep
that
it as a
I
door?
have discussed, and I think that would be fine as long as you're kind of, ghosting some kind of image of a door so it can still kind of read as a garage.
My understanding is that when originally the parking was not in the garage, it was underneath the house. And that this door was not original because there's no way to even get in the door with a car because of where the utility poles are placed in the alley.
Okay, you're losing control of this. We need to do questions.
Yeah, yes. So, so currently, your question, Chris, is to retain the entrance, but make a false door in front of it so they can use it as they need to. No?
No, he was saying outline where the door was with some type of trim or some type of trim or siding that's reminiscent that there was a door there, but not necessarily a functioning door. Is that correct, Chris?
That's what I thought. Your suggestion is there never was a door there?
Correct. There was parking through the side alley and underneath the house.
But might they have wanted to get equipment in and out, and that was a purpose of that door for the shed? I mean, it should be able to see if it was remodeled or not from the framing on the inside. That looks pretty old trim. It's pretty authentic.
Yeah. It's a piece of plywood. I mean, the trim is
doors are
unlike
plywood, but I think
the trim is unlike any of the other trim around the structure.
In what way, Danielle?
Oh, I wish my husband was here because I have no idea in what way. I'll have to ask him again and have him tell you because he's teaching a class right now and not able to be here, but that's what he told me to say. So.
Okay. So if we have it right, if I have this right, the door was not originally there. That it got added through time for people to use it, and original parking was there.
That's what the petitioner is saying, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at the bottom of the door in the close-up in that picture, it looks like that there's some kind of foundation or something that would preclude that being used for auto entry. But I take Chris's point around that maybe it was used as a shed.
Mhm. Okay.
I believe it was used as a shed and the doors were put there after the fact, like you said, to get out lawn equipment and larger items.
Any more questions, Chris?
I just can't imagine building a shed that only has a people door on it. But it's hard to say, and since I haven't looked inside, I can't assert that that door existed or didn't exist. It looks appropriate on that end, but that's all I got.
All right, Chris, thank you.
I'd like to comment on the trim in that if you look at the window above the door, you can see how it's done, and then it has an overhanging lip above it, and the house does too. And that door is lacking any of the really nice trim that the windows and doors on the house and the garage have, except for these doors.
Thank you, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, did you have any questions?
I do not have any questions.
Okay. Deb, do you have any questions? still with us? Deb?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan? Do you have any
Nope, I don't have any either.
All right. Sam?
No questions.
Ernesto?
No questions. Thank you.
Jenny? Derek?
No.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Well, I have some comments, so we'll just save it for them. Chris, let's go to comments. Wait, I know. Chris?
Seems kind of a toss-up. It could be easily done and might be even easier to do to fill it in as a kind of as mock doors. You would just set the plywood, new plywood back farther enough to put 1x detail on top of the door, and you could do that. It isn't that important and I don't know that it was original. It's pretty far from the road. But I think that's a sensible compromise. Staff could approve the way the doors look.
Okay. Jeff, comments?
I agree that I think it might be just as easy or easier to mock a door. There'll be less replacement of the lap siding, and it will retain kind of the feeling of the typical building in the back of a house in this area that would have some kind of doors. These doors obviously aren't original, but I think you're going to lose some of the appeal of the building with just a plain lap-sided wall.
Thank you, Jeff. Susan?
Deb?
Sorry, Deb.
I'd agree with that if the petitioner was okay with it, and if Connor's okay with it.
Okay. Thanks, Susan. Deb?
Yeah, I take what Jenny said, her observations about the framing of windows was matching the house. So if you framed in the door as a fake door and had some extra money or time or interest, you could put at least a top, I have no idea the correct terminology architecturally, but a top lip piece of wood that would shadow the window above and the windows on the main house. Very simple, not all the siding or anything, just the sideways framing, but just the top framing as a cap.
Thank you, Deb. Sam?
I would echo Jenny's comments, and that I don't believe the door is original. The trim is a 1x4 around, and the trim around the windows is 1x6 with the head has the drip edge at the top. So I would support the petitioner just ripping the entire opening out and putting lap siding over the whole thing. And if they so desired to add additional fenestration, because I do have some sympathy with other commissioners' comments that once you sort of pull it out, the elevation has less interest. But given that it's not an original opening, I think unless you're paving the whole thing over, basically, you have some latitude as to what you do there.
Thanks, Sam. Ernesto?
Yes, I agree with some of the comments here. I think this is not obviously an original part of the building. I'm with the petitioner. I think they could just fill that in. It was never part of the original structure. That's my take.
Okay. Derek?
I'd support what both Sam and Ernesto just said. It doesn't look like it's part of the original. So we really don't know, we don't know what to tell this person not to do because we don't know what was there in the first place. So anyhow, that's it.
I would agree with my fellow commissioners. So we need to make a motion.
I would make a motion to approve COA 20-25.
Do we,
That was Sam Dassault.
okay, who seconded?
Nobody.
Okay.
Okay, so we need a different kind of a motion now. Chris?
I'm going to second the original motion.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Go ahead, Eddie.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sam DeSolar,
Yes.
Susan Dyer,
Yes.
Jeff Golden,
Yes.
Deb Hutton,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Chris Sturbaum.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0-0.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening.
All right, here we go.
All right, so let's move on to, this is a resubmission, and this would be COA 20-21, 309 South Davison Street.
So this petition was denied by the HPC at the May 28th meeting. The petitioner has requested another review because their builder, Steve Reddick, was not able to participate in the May 28th meeting. He is here tonight, and they believe they discovered some additional evidence, information about the foundation. So the request is to demolish this primary structure on the lot. You see page 12 of the Greater Prospect Hill Design Guidelines. I hope everybody was able to read that, as well as part of Title 8, really sections 2 and 3 of 8.12 of Title 8, which talks about the demolition criteria that the commission should take into consideration when a demolition is proposed. So staff comments during a recent walkthrough, staff found that the physical evidence supports the petitioner's claims about the condition of the foundation and floor structure. The architectural style of the building really is not unique or of a rare occurrence in Bloomington. Staff finds that the commission should take into consideration the state of deterioration, disrepair, and structural stability, as well as the balance of the public interest in preserving the structure, the integrity of the district, with the interest of the owner of the building or structure and utilization of that property. I think that's an important point. Should be considered and weighted heavily in the commission's decision tonight. I also want to point out that the Greater Prospect Hill Design Review Committee unanimously supported this project, and several of the neighbors have come forth and supported the project as well. This is written by a neighbor, Jessica Mott. If you want to quickly read that.
Okay.
I'm going to turn it over to Aviva and Steve. They have a short presentation that they're going to make. So
Connor, can I share the screen?
absolutely, yeah. Let me get that going for you, Aviva.
While I'm waiting for that, I want to thank everybody for your patience and your willingness to entertain this a second time.
Okay. You guys should be able to share now.
I can. Okay, so I'm going. Tell me if you'll have to confirm what you see.
PowerPoint.
Oh, you do see the PowerPoint? Do you see a picture of, it says white chalk applied to visible cracks?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if, Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here, Aviva. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can't see you, but that's fine. If you move over a little bit, you'll be in the picture. It says Steve is operating from my home and I'm operating from my office.
I'm looking at a different, yeah.
Okay, you're good. You're good. Okay, Steve, I'm gonna just let you tell me when to advance the slides.
Okay, well, what I did was for the purpose so that everybody could maybe see what we've called out on the foundation is that the cracks I went through with white chalk, and I just highlighted all the cracks so anybody can see them. And I think the chalk is still out there. but the cracking on the foundation is evident from the outside. And if you get down at eye level, you'll see that there's been constant movement of that entire foundation structure. So the fact that it doesn't go any deeper than 16 inches down into the ground just has subjected it to frost heaving whenever the freezing got that deep, and it's caused irrevocable damage to that foundation, and so it has to be removed. You can advance the pictures through the photographs we've taken of that, Aviva.
Okay, here's.
I just went around the building and did all the corners and some of the places in between, because there's no section of stone that exists that's probably any longer than 4 feet that I could find that is not subject to all the cracks. And the cracks are not just in the mortar, but some of them are also in the stone as well. So it's the other thing that we noticed, if you go inside the foundation, there never was mortar properly tuck pointed on the backside of any of the stone. So they have a very thin line of support. If you look at the way the stones stack from the outside and the way the mortar is applied to those spaces between the stones, they never were really set in a bed of mortar. It was very slapdash when they did it, and it's obviously, you know, held a building for a while, but it's not. It's in constant movement when it freezes. So the foundation's not deep enough, and it's structurally not able to support the building. The engineer didn't see the depth of the foundation when he looked initially, when Aviva had him look at this. He never dug around and looked at the corners, which something that I did. I dug all the corners out, and we found that there was insufficient depth of foundation everywhere, as well as the crawl space, which is too shallow and sloped, and it's obviously, if you look inside it, it's wet. It's even wet in dry weather, so it's has no ability. You have no ability to work in there. So everything has to be excavated. The foundation has to be removed, and then the crawl space has to be excavated before a proper foundation can be placed to support a house.
Can I advance the pictures?
Yes, sure. Yeah, these are some of the inside pictures, which just show basic gaps between the stones inside that have never been filled. Occasionally, there's a rock that's been put in to support the space, and then they got some mortar in, you know, in places, but it's not a continuous sort of job. It's, like I said, it's pretty slapdash, and someone's gone back occasionally and done some repointing on it. So it's not, I saw no evidence of anyone who had extremely good masonry skills, or even, I would say, average masonry skills. And I've built about 30 new houses in my life and done a lot of remodels, and this is one of the worst foundations that I think I've seen. Yeah, that's some more of the inside shots, which show just the irregularity of the stone and the irregularity of the masonry work. And that as well, there are places you'll see light coming through, and those, you've seen that. There's places where there's no mortar between the stones, and several of these pictures I took so as to show that, but there was never any mortar placed between the stones when they were set on one on top of the other. So you end up with quite a bit of space between the stones, and it's just, air and insect filtration through those kind of gaps. Yep, same thing there. Yeah, more of the holes right about in the middle of the photograph. There's light coming through. Places where there's just no mortar. There's one, no mortar.
Okay, Steve, those are all the pictures. I'm happy to, I sent them to Connor, and I'm happy to have you folks, if you want to look at them more, to view them more. And I also want to say how much I appreciated the folks who came out to actually look themselves to see it. Steve, did you have anything you wanted to add before I just kind of summed up?
Well, I mean, I think the foundation speaks for itself. If you look at it or you look at the pictures, obviously, the people that came out to look at it, we do appreciate that because it was a hot day and everybody's, got a lot going. But it's the sort of thing that, with the lack of the proper depth and the lack of the proper construction on the original wall, there's nothing we can do with this wall except to salvage the stone that are in it, which we intend to do because there are some, nice examples of Indiana limestone and they're usable. But and fortunately, the mortar will actually be fairly easy to get off of them because it's so sparsely applied and so inconsistently applied that cleaning them up will be a little easier than if it had been a full mortared wall that was being demolished. So anyway, I just appreciate everybody taking a look and I, if you have any questions, let me know. I hope I've made the explanation clear enough that this foundation is not deep enough or built sufficiently enough to support a finished structure. And, anyway, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Hang in there, Steve. Don't go anywhere. I'm sure we'll have some questions.
Oh yeah, I'm right. I'm just looking at one computer and talking in the other. So.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just want to, if I can just summarize before questions, again with a thank you, but then also that all the vibes I've gotten from the neighbors is that no one is attached to this house as is. I just heard that it would be useful, so I wrote to a bunch of neighbors, and that was the neighbor I heard back from, who I want to, full disclosure, say is also a good friend of mine. But I feel like I am going to build a house that's going to look in the style, in the way that you want it, with as much salvage material as possible. This is not an attempt to slapdash and use the property. I intend to make this my ADA compliant retirement home. I would love it. My understanding is that if you allow me to demolish it, I could also dig a basement, which would allow me to put the utilities in there and have a place for tornadoes. But I don't materially understand how this is different from House Street. I do understand that you don't want people just buying old houses and mowing them down, but I don't think that's the case here. I bought it with the full intention of rehabbing it as is. And it was only when Steve got into the foundation, which is something I regret not doing ahead of time, that we found out how bad it was. Because of the situation, I cannot insure it, and I cannot get a loan on it. If I demolish it, I can get a builder's loan on it. But an unsound structure cannot, they said until you get the information that it's up to code, they will not, the banks won't lend to me. So I take some responsibility for not understanding. I did not know that the house was uninsured for 10 years. The guy came and just mowed the lawn. But I take some responsibility for not investigating the consequences. I do think, though, that the neighborhood will be richer for the very cute, in the same exact style. I think our only deviation is going to be to add a bedroom on the back, but everything else is going to be exactly the same. And I think it's going to be really nice for the neighborhood. I look forward to living a hop, skip, and a jump from Crescent Donuts. So basically, I just want to, I understand what your concerns are, but I think the cost to us and the lack of benefit to us is not outweighed by some theoretical love of oldness when we can provide something that I think will be indistinguishable except for the fact that it's not decrepit. So thanks a lot, and Steve and I are here to answer questions if you have questions or relate to your comments if helpful.
Thank you, Aviva. Chris, questions?
Yeah, I haven't been able to get to the site because of my hip problems. I had assumed that it had pier corners and then was filled in later between the piers, but I don't think that's what I'm seeing in this demonstration. And I'd like that to be affirmed by Petitioner. And I'm also seeing, I thought it was on beams, but I'm seeing 2 by bands instead of actual beams that would have been between piers. So I think what I'm hearing said is that this whole foundation was laid together and it just wasn't laid deeply enough. It isn't that it has secure piers on the corners. Although sometimes they would have built piers on out of multiple stone and then filled it in. But this is after the beam and post era
Perimeter,
of
it's a
building. It
perimeter.
looks like and so I am having a lot more sympathy for this foundation argument than I expected to have. I
What's
do
the question, Chris?
not like precedent of taking these down. So we'll have to have serious findings about the conditions that we don't allow this to become a precedent setting building. So I would like to hear a little, if it's too, I'm asking questions. So could petitioner and contractor talk a little more about that foundation?
I yield to my contractor.
Chris, I dug under the corners of the building, which the picture that's on the screen right now is the corner, the southwest corner, closest to the alley. And again, the bottom stone there was 16 inches, I think, or maybe about 16 inches at that point below the existing grade. And it is a fairly large stone. And then the one that sits on it overhangs it, but it didn't appear to be a stacked pier. It looked like it was laid in with the wall, but it could have been something that they could have come back and possibly laced into, but I couldn't. There's a tag that I've got on there. I think it's a little yellow envelope that says #1. And that area is a smaller stone and it's not very wide. So that is a corner. So it doesn't look like the corners were laid up as piers, but we could meet out there and you could certainly, have a look and see what you or, some of you want to.
You've investigated it pretty thoroughly, it looks to me like.
Well, I did quite a bit of digging. I dug relief ditches and I dug all the corners and then I dug along the foundation to verify the depth everywhere. That was my concern.
Right.
I didn't realize it was that shallow when we started, but I just thought some problems with the masonry. But then I realized, on all the digging that there was just not the depth there.
Thank you.
Jeff, questions?
No question.
Deb, questions?
Questions?
No questions. Thank you. Susan?
Nope, no questions.
Sam?
No questions.
Ernesto?
No questions at this time.
Jenny?
I had a question for staff. If this is removed and we give reason to be removed, is there a way to keep other parts like the limestone front steps or something? Because they definitely tie in with the rest of the neighborhood and stuff like that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with those other than they probably need a rail.
Yeah, that's something we can certainly work out in the approval. You can put that caveat in there.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say that I'm very motivated that anything, my garage is full of interior trim right now, and anything that we can salvage, we will.
And can I also add that I agree about the steps and any of those features, that I find those steps to be in fairly good shape, very fixable as both sets. The sidewalk is good. And, I'd looked at some additional landscaping to kind of complement what's there from that corner shot that we're looking at right now. So I agree that there's things about the house that we want to, try to keep and replicate the look that I see right there, so that if you came up the street, you wouldn't recognize, except that it maybe looked in very good shape as opposed to that situation that you now see.
All right, thank you, Steve. Derek, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Connor, when are we, I understand there's a neighbor who is here at this meeting. When are we doing public comments? I don't think I remember that anybody else getting a chance to ask questions or talk or make comments in public.
Yeah, I think the public comments come after the commissioner comments.
All right, well, in that case, I don't have any questions.
Okay, terrific, Gary, thank you. All right, Chris, comments?
What were the comments? Well, I will say that there's a percentage of West Side foundations that won't meet code and won't get repaired like this. I mean, this is a combination of a problem because somebody could point them up like they've been doing for 100 years. And the problem is that the bands are rotting and things. I mean, it's repairable. It's not a good condition. And I'm surprised at how shallow it is. And that's the only reason that I'm wavering on not just completely opposing this, because it does set a bad precedent. You know, we've fixed things this bad, but it would take a lot of work to redo that foundation, and it could be done.
Yeah.
How would you excavate the footers? How would you excavate down below?
Well, we did it on a house. This was a house set on piers that had bad fill. We actually dug deep right beside it, supported the house in steps, took the stone down, hand dug under, because you only have to dig in about 12 inches once you've, power dug right beside the foundation. Then you dig in enough to put a footer down and you lay the block up. And
then how would you excavate the crawl space?
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I've put foundations under existing walls in basement walls where we, made like an exterior entrance. But in those cases, the foundations were stable and they were in good repair. And of course, this is not a deep foundation, but obviously anytime you're working down in a hole like that, it's, there's weight above you. And I agree, you are digging under it and then you put in a footer and you have to support the stone that's there. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I looked at a possible way of doing that, and it looked to me like your approach, but just go ahead and disassemble the wall, in whatever measured section would be workable, and then put the footer and then rebuild that part of the wall while that part of the house is supported, and then move your way around. But obviously, at some point, it becomes cost prohibitive or at least more expensive than some people might think it's worth. I like the stone on the foundation, and we want to reuse the stone, but we're going to, obviously it's up to you to decide what you think the best thing for Bloomington is here. But I just, we want to replicate what's there, but put in a very solidly built house, one that is, you're not going to crack and settle. And this one's, anyway, I know, it's, I recognize you're working out positivity here. I'm looking at what Aviva wants in a final house. And from the street where the water drains to, the corner of the alley, there is, if we do get permission to rebuild this, then we can actually put in a basement in the place where this crawl space is, which for the homeowner gives her the advantage for a huge, nice mechanical room as well as a storm cellar. And then the space above it becomes totally usable and able to be, occupied. And I know Spring Point's drawings originally, this is the exact house that they have on the drawing. Barry put it together, and she just, I think the mechanical room was somewhere in the floor space of the house, but obviously it's a value if you can have your utilities and all your utility functions in the lower level. But I know that's kind of beyond the architectural question here, but it's still of a great advantage to the homeowner, who obviously Aviva wants to make a house that is something she can retire in and have total accessibility. And so anyway,
I hear that. So I just want to speak in my comments to the record. We have to be careful that we aren't starting a slippery slope and that we aren't setting a precedent that, you know, condition rules everything. The foundation is particularly bad here. And if it was on piers and if these were on beams, as I had supposed, I wouldn't approve this, but it's frame structure on an inadequate foundation. And since there is full review of the infill, I feel comfortable with this, but I do not like precedent, and I want to make sure that we are doing it strictly on specific conditions of this property, and it shouldn't generalize to other properties. That properties like this, a foundation like this with a house that was maintained on top of it would be a pointing job. You'd clean up, you'd repoint it, but the structure is falling apart on top of it, and it's weak and it doesn't have beams. So I'm reluctantly letting this go.
So Chris, I want to speak to your comment about setting precedent. You know, the HPC does not set precedent with these types of decisions. The HPC reviews each case individual and unique to its specific conditions. You know, in the Title 8 Historic Preservation Code, it talks about one of the criteria for demolition is the HPC should be looking at the state of deterioration, disrepair, and structural stability when they are taking demolition into consideration. So, you know, they need to talk about those points every time you look at demolition. You need to be taking the state of deterioration, disrepair, and structural stability into consideration. You don't, just because you find that it meets instability or, disrepair and deteriorate doesn't mean you have to allow demolition, but you should be taking that as part of your consideration, which I think you're doing here and doing a good job with. But I just wanted to reiterate that, you know, the HPC does not set precedent. If we set precedent, then when we allowed Jim Rosenbarger to demolish that structure last summer, this would be a shoe-in, right? Because we allowed him to demolish a property in Greater Prospect Hill a couple blocks away. So I just, to your point, we don't set precedent.
Right. I just say the argument is always the same. It's our job to determine the veracity of the argument.
Right.
Thank you.
Chris. Jeff, comments?
I am very conflicted about this demolition. You know, I was there. I did walk through the house. I understand the foundation is an issue for sure. That being said, except for the bathroom, walking around the inside of the house, there was very little signs of settlement. So it's been there for 100 years and it's still there. Is the foundation an issue? For sure. I think we all agree it can be fixed. How much that will cost, that's not my expertise. And to the argument that that what you're replacing it with will be exactly the same is not the point of historic preservation. On the other hand, I was part of the original determination and writing of the guidelines for this district, and it is historic light. I want people to be able to live there. I get her point about financing, although I'm sure you could get a commercial note subject to completion. There are different ways to finance this project other than a traditional mortgage. And then once the work is done, then you can get a traditional mortgage. So I'm just going to listen to the other commissioners, and that will determine the way I vote.
Thank you, Jeff. Deb?
Yes, agree with the conflict exposed by or expressed by Chris and Jeff both. But I didn't go to it, staying inside, so didn't go to see it inside. My only comment would be that if we allow the demolition to go through, that as much as possible that the limestone blocks be used either practically or decoratively around the foundation so it looks the same, not be the blocks taken away from the foundation and made into planters around the front or whatever, but instead be that the foundation be use those limestone foundation blocks in as practical as possible, whether it's just on the outside of a sturdy foundation or as part of a better foundation for looks. So thank you.
All righty, Deb, thank you. Susan?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Sam?
Oh, I'm full of comments. So I crawled under the house. I differ with Steve's evaluation of the foundation. I live in a house that was built in the late 20s, early 30s, and you know, I've got light shining through various parts of my limestone foundation walls, and I'm really happy with my house. That said, so I think this house is salvageable. You know, the ridge is straight. The foundation has not, to my eye, incurred differential settlement over its entire existence. I agree that you know, all the roof rafters are sagging. You need to reinforce those. The floor beams or the floor joists rather, they're solid, but they're overspanned. But you know, structural arguments aside, I'm looking more strongly at what's for the greater good here. And I am thankful that the petitioner came back and asked us to look at this again, because looking at this again, regardless of the new arguments, I think the fact that the neighborhood commission or the neighborhood committee unanimously supports this project, and the fact that she is willing to work within the spirit of what this neighborhood is about, transcends what keeping this exact structure in place would do for the neighborhood and for greater Bloomington for me. So I've talked to the structural engineer. I talked to the structural engineer not only in regard to this house, but in regard to Jim Rosenbarger's house down the street. This house is in better shape. The Rosenbarger house was a tear down. This one, it's a little iffy, but like, what are you saving and what are you gaining by saving it? That's more questionable. So after a long period of consideration, I'm going to support demolition on this one.
Thank you, Sam. Ernesto?
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's in bad shape. Yes, but I think you can rescue this house. I've seen houses in a lot worse conditions, and they're one of the most beautiful now in that precise neighborhood. Prospect Hill, near West Side, all over the place here in Bloomington. I just think that you can still salvage that. Yes, it has problems, you know, but those can be solved. And just to remind the structural report, it talks about the ways that this could be salvaged, the ways that we can resolve each little problem that it has. There's no place in that report that recommends demolition of this house. That could be salvaged. I don't think, yeah, we talked about that. We don't set precedents, sure, that's okay. But it could send a signal that we can do this over and over. We have the ability to fix this house. The foundation, yes, is in bad shape, sure. We've seen worse conditions than this. And the house is there beautifully, standing in color. So there are ways to fix this. It would be a really shame if this come down. I think I'm really surprised that the neighborhood is supporting this. I mean, as bad as it looks, it just shows you that still standing, and we should be proud of this. We should be proud of this house that is still standing, as poorly as it was built back in the day. It's still standing. There has to be this will and passion to preserve this type of structures. You know, when we see these type of structures on the street, it's like a challenge. You have to own it and with passion, fix it. Otherwise, we would be tearing down every little thing that we see just because it represents a challenge. I'm on an advisor level, but which means that I don't have a vote, but I do have a voice for these structures. And I don't think it deserves to be turned down. Just a reminder, you know, the structural report does not recommend to demo this house. Totally the opposite. It gives you a map to try to fix this. Yes, there are some structures that are very, you know, really, really bad shape. Strong winds could just take it down. Not this one. Still standing. I don't know. I don't want to go on a long explanation, but I just think it deserves better. The entire neighborhood in general deserves this house. We should be very protective about this type of structures that can be salvaged. I hear a lot of comments about the foundation. I think it's greater than that. We know that we can fix that foundation in many different ways. Let's find the best way to fix it. I know there are better ways to do that. So I don't know. It's a tough one. Not to decide what to do with it, but if it comes down, that's going to be really tough to see. Again, just in our previous hearing, it was very clear what we thought about this structure. The fact that it's not considered unique doesn't mean that we have to take it down. Just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernesto. So my comments leaning towards what Ernesto has said. I've done a few houses there around the near west side, and I know one of my former associate owns several houses there in the near west side, and we've gone in and replaced entire foundations with block. They've had to support the house, and actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's been some over there in that area where they've gone in and put a basement in underneath the house. It's possible, all that is, and I hate to see another structure go away. But that's up for our commission to make that decision at this point.
I have something to add to my comments when it's at the end of your comments, please.
Yes, Chris.
Are you done?
Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I've listened to fellow commissioners, and I've envisioned how you could do that basement utility in the back. You'd repair that entire back wall with that process. Then you only have these 3 walls to fix. The jewel of the house is the historic authenticity of the front part. You can add as much as you need in the back. I have listened to my fellow commissioners and changed my mind on this. I don't think the foundation is enough to drive this. And I think the fact that it's like every other house in the neighborhood means that it's a contributing house, and that every other house in the neighborhood has a value, and they have a value as a group. And the authenticity will not be there even if you build a new house that looks just like the old house. So I am going to vote against this demolition. And it's so close. That's what I mean. I changed my mind in the course of this meeting, and then in the course of this meeting changed it back. So I just wanted to announce that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any public comments?
I don't think everybody spoke yet.
No.
Not Jenny, not I.
Go ahead, Derek.
Well, I have to agree with Chris. He stole some of my best points there. It is contributing, and that's why it's important. It's important to the houses next door to it, and the house to the left, the house to the right. It's what defines it, the neighborhood, as an old working class neighborhood. Now, I do understand that, you know, petitioner wants more space, et cetera. And that's something, you know, we can talk about going forward, because one thing that we have always allowed here is houses to grow from the back end, which means if you want to extend the house and, you know, out the rear side, you're going to be able to do that. So you will be able to have more space. But I guess the key question is, or the key points are, it is a contributing house. And number two, in the 50 years that BRI has been fixing houses, we have seen way worse than this and fixed it. So it's doable. It's more than doable. And if it's doable, we can't let it go. We can't let it go. Thank you.
Jenny?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I really like about this house. It's got some charming little details. It's not a throwaway house. I actually love the little 9/1 windows. I love the little front porch. It does have a limestone foundation, limestone steps. I'm not an architect. I am not a refurbisher, so I will not speak on that. I will say that I was thinking probably along the lines of some of the other commissioners. There's no reason you can't excavate in the backyard, put a nice storm shelter back there attached to the house, add on a bathroom, add on a master bedroom, you know, a nice screen porch. There's all kinds of things that can be done with this house to get the things that the petitioner wants without tearing it down. It is going to cost money to renovate it. I think was reflected in its original price. And to tell you the truth, I'm astounded it's still in as good shape it is, considering how long it's sat empty. That is not common for a house to be able to stand that long without some much more serious problems with this. So I am not a voting member, but if it was my house, I wouldn't tear it down. And I think it is salvageable, but I am totally bowing to whatever the architects and other people that know a lot more about structures than I do about. So thank you.
So, public comments? Okay, do we have any public comments?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Jan Sorby, and Steve Wyatt could not be here today. He's on vacation. And so he asked me to be here in his stead. I am the chair of the Endangered Historic Properties Committee and have worked with BRI for many, many years. And I have to agree with a lot of what's being said in terms of the condition of this house. BRI has seen far, far, far worse houses in really, really a lot more questionable condition. Matter of fact, many of the houses over on 6th and 7th that we've done, they did not have a depth of foundation any deeper than this. And the foundations were absolutely in far worse condition than this particular house. And I will say that whoever suggested to Aviva that she needed to lift the entire house up by a house mover to then put a foundation under is really leading her in the wrong direction. You just don't do it that way. You take it down piece by piece, you jack it up that area, and you rebuild it. That's exactly what we have always done. Then also, I have to say that the house is pretty darn square. It's not sloping one way or the other. It looks tidy and square, and it's been there for a very long time. The issue also that Steve wanted me to talk about was the roof system. People have talked about how saggy it is and how it didn't have an adequate substrata. And the fact is most of the roofs in this area, almost all the roofs of this age were built for cedar shake. And cedar shake has a, excuse me, totally different system than what you would typically find in a house today. For cedar shake, the shakes actually get wet and they swell up, and that's how they keep the rain out. And so you have to have members, wooden members that will move and will function in that kind of system. And that's what you see in that roof system in this house. Almost every house in that area and the near west side were originally built with cedar shake. And almost every house in that area will have that roofing system. The overspan on the flooring is not unusual either. Kevin Potter, I believe, suggested how to peer up underneath, and that's exactly what he's done for BRI in every house that we've done in that area. We've done maybe, 45, 55 houses in that area, and they're all in this worse condition than this, and with the same system for the roofing, the same system for the foundation. And also Steve went to our insurance company and he gave them all of the recommendations that we would give on a house of this nature. And it came back with, for the year for insurance, they could insure it for $442 a year. Now, on a personal level, I'm working on a house on West 6th Street, and I have everything covered. I've got bells and whistles on the insurance, and it's under $2,000 for the year. So I would be happy to share both BRI's information, my personal information, whatever I can do to help out on this, because I don't think this house is at the end of its life. I think that there are ways of getting mortgages. There's a 203K loan, which is specifically set up for this kind of situation. There are construction loans, and most of the time what individuals do is they actually use a home equity loan on their own personal house and take out money and then fix up the house that's in disrepair, and then get a conventional loan after it's fixed up. So I don't see any reason in comparison to what BRI has done that this house should be even considered for demolition. It's part of the fabric. It is what the fabric is of the neighborhood. And if we start pulling the threads of that fabric, then the character of that street is completely at risk. How many houses will you have to lose before that fabric is gone? So I'm here on behalf of Steve Wyatt, and I'm also here on behalf of BRI, saying that, you know, we will help Aviva, provide her with our insurance company's names, etc., whatever we can do. We think that this house is really totally savable.
Thank you, Jan. Connor, you had an additional comment?
I'd like to add one more thing. This is Derek, I'm sorry. But the point number 2, where it says the building is not unique or rare occurrence in Bloomington, I really don't know what that has to do with the price of bread when we're talking about a contributing house. So I'm not even sure why that's on there. Maybe someone can explain to me, but that's never really been a determining factor.
Okay. So the reason that's on there is because part of the criteria for designation of a structure is it architecturally unique or a rare occurrence in Bloomington? So that's the reason I pulled that on there.
Okay. Thanks. I just wondered.
So I'd just like to make a quick comment. For those of the public and cats who are watching this meeting, you know, I'm the program manager for historic preservation. I often find myself squarely in the middle between groups like BRI, whose sole mission is to preserve every single building that's old in Bloomington, and groups, homeowners and property owners and people who would like to see Bloomington kind of change and evolve a little bit. And I think really the best answer to all that on a personal level is some kind of balance between those two extremes. I think BRI was very well represented tonight at tonight's meeting. I think the logic that I'm hearing is kind of frighteningly one-dimensional, and that is that because we've saved worse, we have to save this. And I just keep hearing that same point over and over and over again. Using that same logic, you can throw that across the entire city of Bloomington. Say, well, we saved worse, therefore nothing should ever be demolished again that's old. And I think that's too simple. It's too black and white. I was encouraged to hear Sam kind of bring some other criteria into consideration. I think it's important to consider balancing public interest in saving the structure with really the use of the structure or the property by the owner. I think, you know, anytime you have government regulation of property, it's very serious, and you need to think very carefully about all decisions that you make.
Hey,
So,
Connor.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. Your reasoning would be great if this was a demolition delay, but we're talking about a property in a historic district.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so whenever someone becomes a historic district, the logic is we put a glass case over it and it never changes.
Oh, because I agree. My vision for Prospect Hill is that it grows and changes, but that we don't just willy-nilly tear down every house because there are issues with it. You know, that the argument that I've heard many times is about you start removing teeth and you lose the smile. And that's what this property really represents is do we allow that houses that could be fixed be torn down just because it's hard?
Right.
So your ultimate bar there is, can it be fixed? But
No, can it be reasonably fixed? And this is way within the framework of reasonable. That's the point.
All I hear is BRI's fix worse, so we have to save this one.
Yeah, this can be a
That's not
win-win.
why I'm choosing to do this.
I was going to say
That's
this.
my piece. I'm not going to sit here and argue with the commission. I've said how I feel. I think I represent a large part of the community on that. I'm just trying to mediate between two extremes. All I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get us to think about things. I appreciate your logic. I appreciate your feedback, but you know, we can move on. Thank you.
All right. So did I get a motion?
One comment. This can be a win-win. You can preserve the best part of the historic and put a really good new structure to it. And then you get the 100-year floors, you get the trim, you get the best part of the historic, and you get the new structure behind it. So that's why I want to say it doesn't have to be one way or the other here. We can please both goals.
Yeah, we've been very flexible about letting people build almost whatever they want under the rear end of these houses. So I think we're not being too crazy here.
There's some opportunity for me to reply, or are you waiting for a motion?
Go ahead.
Just a couple. I won't waste your time because I feel like it's. Because I feel like, first of all, you spend a lot of time on it, and I appreciate it. But there are three things I wanted to say. First of all, in response to Ernesto, the structural report didn't acknowledge the depth problem. So I think to rely too heavily on it when there was a major factor missing there, and it didn't discuss the issue of, I think, the pointing of the corners. I don't want to misspeak exactly, but it was. We have said all along that we didn't think that was what was fully correct. Second of all, what I hear is a lot of emotion about a house, but I think when we talk about the emotion, you should also ask about the people who live in that neighborhood, not just people who are devoted to housing, but the actual neighbors would prefer to have it demolished. And I think that if you're thinking about precedents, I did not buy this at a, I am sure, I can't tell you, I'm not a real estate, what kind of a deal I got, but I thought I was buying it to renovate it for another $60,000, which is now just not going to be possible. I thought I was going to do a lot of cosmetic things, and when you tell me, and I want to be very clear, Steve never said anything about lifting the house. That was kind of my understanding, like working from the inside out is what I would say. But I think you should think about what you'd want average citizens, not just people who are involved with BRI, to do when they get a house and are really intent on pleasing their neighbors and making it a good place to live. You have a lot of indications that the people who actually live in this neighborhood would be very satisfied with my doing it the way I propose. And furthermore, I think it's just going to slow it down. There's not a universe in which I'm going to mortgage my house to do this. I'm cash flowing this, and I will just do it more slowly. So this has been abandoned for 10 years and then in process for 2 years. It'll be in process for another 5 years. And I think someone else who wants to do what I want to do, which is the right thing, is going to really be deterred from individually trying to fix up a home in the character of the neighborhood, and instead will end up saying, you know, these people are crazy. They're going to make you do all this incredibly expensive work because they value intrinsically, even if you can't see the difference, the historicity of the place. And what you'll have is more places that just rot like this. So if you don't make it reasonable for people to fix it, who have goodwill and really good intentions, and who will save the stairs and who will save the beams where we can, I will eventually fix this house, but it will take me much longer. And it's just kind of a shame for the people in the neighborhood who I think would prefer for me to be able to just do it from the ground up more quickly. So I guess I really am with Connor on this, that I think there's a continuum. There's absolutely no question that with enough money, and if I wanted to mortgage my house, I could get what I needed to do. And I want to say that I appreciate what Jan said, and I will definitely consult her about insurance, because I inquired in 8 separate places and did not find any. But I think you guys are being short-sighted, and that I think you're going to see a lot more places like this in neighborhoods when the word is that it's just impossible to rehab these places without tremendous expense.
Any additional comments?
Yes, John, can I respond to Abiba's comment?
Sure.
Abiba, what I was referring to is that in Kevin Potter's report, he's given us or giving you ways to repair all the parts and pieces of the house. There is no place in his report that because of the deficiencies that it represents structurally, he recommends to demolish the house, just to be clear.
Yeah. As I said, he missed some things in his inspection. I mean, I don't know what he would say if he had heard Steve's overview and saw the pictures.
So that brings us back to a motion.
Move to deny.
Okay, second.
Second.
Jeff. Okay, Eddie.
So is a yes, what is a yes, what is a no?
Yes is in favor of denying the petition.
Okay,
Yes, is demolish.
yes denies the petition to
My bad.
demolish. I vote yes.
I haven't taken the vote yet.
Oh, I thought that, it's hard to hear, so I'm with you.
Okay, all right. So yes is denying the motion, and no is to approve, right?
The motion was to deny the petition.
Okay, okay. I just want to be clear on it. Okay. All right, Sam DeSaller.
So a no is like knock the house down, right?
Yes.
No,
Was that a no?
that's a no.
Okay, all right, thank you. Susan Dyer.
No.
Jeff Golden.
Yes.
Deb Hutton.
Yes.
John Saunders.
Yes.
Chris Sturbaum.
Yes.
Motion to deny carried 4-2.
Thank you for all your time. I want to make sure I'm not still the person, that if I leave, I won't close the whole meeting out.
No, you're good to go.
Okay, good.
Good luck.
Thank you very much, and I will contact Jan.
Very good.
I told you.
Okay. All right. New business.
So JD, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I just wanted JD to speak on this himself. I'll give a brief background to what's going on. I know I forwarded an email chain to the HPC earlier today, giving you some context to this. Basically, City Hall is having some masonry repairs done on the south elevation, which is some tuck pointing and inserting some angle irons, I guess above the windows to prevent some leaking issues they're having. JD, you can explain more of the technical stuff on that in a second. But the contractor, Umphris Masonry, recommended that a water sealant be applied to the brick to mitigate some water infiltration issues that the building has been having. JD consulted me on this, and we did a test patch, and the test patch after a couple weeks looked just a shade darker, but it wasn't much, and it certainly beaded water off, so it was effective. I had always been taught that putting sealants and paints on masonry, old masonry, is a bad idea, so I decided to, I consulted Duncan. He was not in favor of it. I then reached out to a national group of professionals across the country, and I got a few responses that I share with you. And so because of the feedback I received, I asked JD to not apply the sealant to the masonry. However, they would like to still apply the sealant, and JD has, and the engineer John Crane on the project as well as with JD, and they're going to present their argument for why they believe sealant should be applied.
Okay.
Yeah, the project was to address some structural issues across the window headers. Hold on, let me turn this off. I'm getting some feedback. Hold on just a moment. Okay. They did replace the steel window headers across the top of the windows on the top windows, the second floor windows, and we did do 100% tuck pointing on the south wall. The problem we're having isn't exactly a water infiltration issue, and most all the documentation I've seen on this, they don't recommend using it to prevent water infiltration, effervescence, or rising damp from the ground. And that's not what our issue is. Our issue is actually the face of the brick is spalling off. There's chunks of the brick that are, every winter we find piles of pieces of brick at the base of that wall. It's caused by water soaking into the face of the brick and freezing and spalling off. And that's the reason that we request to use the sealer, is to prevent that spalling of the brick. We've had no problems with effervescence on the inside of the building or moisture, other than some water that got through some bad mortar joints that we've corrected with the tuck pointing issue. And we feel that the spalling issue warrants applying a breathable sealer to the exterior of the wall to prevent that from deteriorating the brick face further.
I have a question. So why is this occurring now? I mean, the building's over 100 years old, and why are we seeing this happening?
Pardon me, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. My question is that this structure is over 100 years old now. Why are we seeing this occurring at this point in time? Why hasn't it occurred 50 years ago or 40 years ago? Why are we seeing this spalling now? What's causing it?
If you don't mind, I'd like to respond to that.
Yeah, this is John Crane with BFW Crane. He's our consulting engineer on the project.
I think one of the potential explanations for that is a lot of masonry products, when they're new, have a pretty hard, shiny surface. And whether that's from like a limestone product, whether that's because it was planed and sanded, or if that's a brick product and it has just a formed or a mold, kind of creates more of a tighter face. And I think that's actually one of the things that they endeavor to do in the brick manufacturing process, is try to make as tight and as water resistant face as can be achieved. Well, and they do accomplish that, but one of the things that I guess is ever present is weathering. And so what we see is it's kind of a self-aggravating process in the fact that, after a few years, weathering takes an initial toll, and the initial, smooth, non-porous surface tends to lose some of its shininess, if you will. And as such, it tends to become a slight bit porous, which allows a very small amount of absorption of ambient, on a humid day like today, okay, or whatever. Well, I guess where I'm really headed, and to answer your question, is over time, the shininess wears off and it just becomes more and more porous. And as it becomes more porous in the winter, it's able to absorb more water and freeze and expand and cause what, surface density to even be, further degraded, and it absorbs more water the next time. Like I say, it's a self-aggravating process. It's kind of a downward spiral. And the older brick buildings, this isn't the only example of this, by the way. This is actually, common in old brick buildings and old stone buildings. We actually have more experience and spend more time in the limestone industry than we do, or limestone, realm than we do the brick realm. But the effects are the same in the fact that, once the nice tight surface is gone, it just is able to absorb a little more water and freeze and make it worse. And then the next time it's able to absorb a little more water and it freezes and spalls and makes it worse. And so that's why, and eventually that's why it's so important that we do something now, at least in my opinion, is because it has spalled off, it has gotten to this point, it's one of those logarithmic or exponential problems. The worse it gets, the worse it gets. And so that's why we're seeing an acceleration of it now. And that's why I think it's really the most prudent to try to put down, try to mitigate the whole problem.
And one of my concerns about applying a product on the surface of the bricks is that moisture could still get behind that sealant, and then we could still have the same problem.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you at all. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. One of my concerns about putting a sealant on the brick is that moisture will still get in there and will still cause our same problem. And my other concern about using a sealant is how often will it have to be reapplied to continue the protection?
Well, I guess my only reply to that is, and I guess it's a pretty arguable point, is sure, we're not going to be able to prevent 100% of any moisture from continuing to cause the problems we had, but we can certainly stop a significant portion of it. It seems that, gosh, the ability to mitigate, and I would only be guessing at percentages, and so I would have no way, so guys, if we're able to slow down 95% or 98% or 99%, that certainly seems desirable. And as far as the frequency of repeat, I don't know. I do know, though, that if left totally totally exposed like it is now, it will become an even more progressive problem. And so the frequency of some reapplication, I can't respond to that, but, and I would guess you're right, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know, but I'm sure that it will need reapplied.
Yes, Sam, questions?
Can the petitioner speak to the condition of the tuck pointing on the south elevation and the condition of the gutters on the south elevation, and also speak a little bit as to why they think that it's happening on the south and not any of the other elevations.
Well, I think that the south elevation is exposed to more of the wind-driven rain than the other elevations. It is a problem that is occurring on the other elevations of the building, but it does seem more pronounced on the south end of the building.
One of the things that I personally feel that is why we always see it on the south elevation primarily, and a little bit on the east and a little on the west and never on the north, is because of when the sun shines on that. Let's say we're talking about a cold January day, 25-degree ambient air temperature. Oh my gosh, when the sun shines on that brick, it's bouncing off the parking lot or whatever the surface is, and if you lay your hand on that brick in the wintertime, if the ambient air is 25, the bricks may be 35 degrees at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just because of the just because of the sun shining on them and then being a dark color and then absorbing the heat from the sun and warming. And then, okay, once again, sun goes down, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody's headed home. Well, those bricks cool down from the 35 that they may have achieved back down to 25 ambient air temperature. And so I think that's actually why we see it being more prevalent, more pronounced, and generally, if we're ever going to see it on a building, it is on the south side. And it's normally on like I say, the darker bricks absorb more heat than the lighter bricks do, and it's more pronounced on brick than on stone. But I feel it's solely because of the freeze thaw, the repeated freeze thaw that the south wall sees, whereas the north wall, it's in the shade all winter long. Those bricks are 25 degrees in the night and 25 degrees during the day. But the south ones are the ones that really have the temperature fluctuations, just like say, just due to the sun coming up and going back down again.
As a follow-up question, I'd ask, would you advocate for similar treatment on the east and west?
Sure.
But not at this time? Or is that something that you're willing to pursue?
I guess we didn't necessarily discuss any particulars on if we were going to, apply it to one particular side or where the limits would be. I guess to us, it was more of a, should we put it on or not? And so we were just of the opinion that, boy, and we certainly understand that there's certain problems that sealers do not fix. And we certainly acknowledge that. But this is one that we feel is only fixable by some exterior protection. As far as the limits, gosh, I would think we would definitely want to do the south because of the acceleration of the problem. I would leave that up for discussion. I don't know that I have now that actually I just never really thought about it, and as far as the few seconds I've had to consider it while I'm sitting here, I don't really have a very strong opinion. I think the south side ought to be done. To the extent of any other sides would be just, I suppose we can evaluate that depending upon the extent of the deterioration. Maybe find a real good, if I recall on the east elevation, there's two subtle building lines. One is somewhat skewed to the normal orthogonal northeast southwest directions, and one is somewhat parallel. It's a north-south wall. There might be some easy places to stop that would never be visually comparable to a surface immediately adjacent to, what I'm trying to say here. There would probably be some places it would make sense to stop and start. And so, but here again, I guess I really don't have any real strong opinions on the stopping and starting points other than I think we ought to do the south wall.
And from a project standpoint, the scope of our repair and tuck pointing project was the south wall. And we were just, since we had the scaffolding up on the south wall as part of this project anyway, and that was the worst area of spalling, that's the reason we requested the south wall.
And I might have missed it in your earlier response, but can you speak to the condition of the tuck pointing on the south and also the east and west walls, as well as this may not be in your scope, but the condition of the gutters and all of those as well?
The gutters, the drainage of the roof system seems to be in good shape. It's mostly internal downspouts at City Hall. And we repair those as they start leaking and leaking into the offices. The actual, what was the other part of the question?
Oh,
Tuck
just
pointing.
the condition of the mortar and how much tuck
Oh,
point.
on the south end, we were looking at least probably a 40% tuck point on the south wall. We decided to do 100% tuck point just to get the consistency, because there have been so many patches through the years with the wrong mortar compounds and caulking that it just looked awful. And we decided to do 100% tuck pointing just from a maintenance standpoint, that it would eliminate any water infiltration. And then from an appearance standpoint, it would make that whole wall consistent. The tuck pointing on the east side of the building wasn't in quite as bad a shape. We were probably looking at a 10 to 20% tuck pointing on the east wall of the building. I can't speak to the north end that the county owns or the west end that CFC owns.
As far as the damage that we observed on the east side was primarily, and here again, just to kind of refresh, remember, if you're standing out on Morton and you're looking to the west, you see all the sawtooths. At the bottom of all the sawtooth is where the scupper and gutter downspout system is. Right around and localized, specifically localized around the scupper exit. That's really where we saw the primary amount of mortar spalling, mortar damage, mortar deterioration. And so that's where we really expected most of the tuck point. And that's where we specified on our plans for the tuck pointing to actually be primarily, focused on. The rest of it's really in pretty good shape.
But the spalling is not only just occurring at the portions at the scuppers, but it's prevalent.
Well, gosh, I don't want to get bogged down in semantics. The spalling is a serious issue on the south side. It's not nearly as serious on the east sides or anywhere else. I mean, we didn't really observe it to be that big of a deal anywhere else. Okay, the issues that we see on the east side, for example, are more of a tuck point. It's more of the mortar deteriorating due to the splash. Okay, here again, it's all caused by water. And the reason why it's always around the scuppers is because that's where the water, I would assume, would run down with some velocity enough to hit the scupper and splash a little on the surface of the brick. And here again, it's just the repeated exposure to moisture and below freezing temperatures that accelerates some of the damage. We just didn't. Well, one, we didn't take the man lift around the east side and get up and really scrutinize all the scupper locations. We were doing it from the ground. But yet it didn't appear to have, for whatever reason, it just didn't appear to have the significance of the spalling. Like I say, it was spalling and mortar on the south side. On the east side, it was mainly just the mortar, at least from my observations. And we didn't see a bunch of brick chips laying on the sidewalk down below, and so, but once again, it's kind of consistent with what we believe to be the real cause, which is the sun coming up every day, warming it up, and sun going back down and it cooling back down. On the east sides, you really don't have that, the fluctuation each and every day to the extent you do on the south side. The damage that we see around the scuppers is normal splash, and that splash is present at almost any location where there's available water sources if the masonry is exposed to freezing conditions. You can walk down the street and see a lot of that exact same damage right down near the sidewalk. And it's just the water hitting the sidewalk and splashing back up. That's just the cause. The really accelerated deterioration, in my opinion, is when the sun warms it up and then it cools down. I mean, it's exposed to, 100 freeze thaw cycles every winter, as opposed to just the 10 or 12 freeze thaw cycles that some of the other sides of the building are exposed to.
Thank you, John. Chris, do you have a question? Oh, you're muted. Let me unmute you. Unmute yourself. There you go. No, you're still muted.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, I'd ask, is there a chance that there's humidity transferring from inside the building into the brick? Because if that's the case, then you are compounding the problem if you seal that exterior. So sometimes, I know it happens in houses. I'm not enough of an expert, but I know humidity is tricky. And so it's a kind of a two-part question. Are you 100% sure it's not transferring from the inside? Because obviously the sun and the humidity makes sense, but where's the humidity coming from? And part two, would it make sense to do a test area? Because it could be a catastrophic mistake if the humidity is coming from the inside.
Well, as far as, and here again, I suppose, hey, tests are always fine with me. But as far as, you can visually look at the brick and see how porous it is. And so, in my opinion, there's no question the fact that it is absorbing any kind of rain or any kind of free moisture, any kind of, water is being soaked right up. It has a visibly porous surface, okay? As far as, I don't recall seeing a tremendous amount of effervescence on the outside of the building, okay? Whenever there's too much moisture on the inside of the building and it wicks its way through and the warm sun evaporates it away, I mean, that's what causes effervescence deposits on the outside of buildings, okay? And we don't really see that. There's probably a really well-functioning HVAC system inside in City Hall. And so, as far as there to be some, dew point problems or some kind of issues with some buildup of moisture, I'm going to guess that the HVAC system must be sufficient, because we never really see a lot of any moisture on windows or steam or not going to say steam, but the windows don't fog up. And so I guess in absence of any kind of evidence of moisture coming from inside out, we see a lot of evidence, or at least the potential for absorption in the porous faces of the brick. And so because we saw so much porosity in the brick, it just seems like the obvious explanation.
I had a quick question. This is Jenny. I have a quick question.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. How to phrase this? I'm hearing that the scaffolding is still up, and that you just twig punted and sealed the windows, and did a lot of work on that side. So, but we haven't gone through another winter again to see if that actually fixed the problem. Is that what I'm hearing? Or was it done last year and we know this winter it didn't fix the problem?
Well, here again, it was kind of a visibly obvious that the mortar was missing in several joints. Yeah. It's also visibly obvious that the face, the smooth, shiny, hard, water repellent face has totally been weathered away. And so we certainly have, I guess I didn't realize that already all the work had been done.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, so now all the tuck points done, sure, the mortar joints are back up to 100%, but it's visibly obvious that the brick faces are terribly porous. And so sure, we could let it go through another winter. I know what's going to happen. I guess there's no reason for, I guess I shouldn't have said it in that manner. There is no reason for me to suspect that the mere replacement of the mortar would fix the problem. It would mitigate the amount of water that was coming through the very open mortar joints, but it would do nothing to mitigate the water that I'm sure is being absorbed by the very porous bases of the brick.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Comment.
All right, Chris.
I'd feel safest if we did a test sample spot, even if it's a fairly large sample. Because if it is a mistake and you have more spalling after sealing, it's too late. And I could be completely wrong, and I probably am, but that's that possibility that it isn't exactly from the absorption from the exterior. There's clearly moisture finding its way. So I would be comfortable with a sample, but I think it's a safe way to go.
I definitely, and here again, like I mentioned before, hey, as a structural engineer, I'm always cool with testing, okay, as opposed to just, gosh, just letting it happen and being curious. Here's the deal, though. I don't know that, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but let's just say we did half of the south face. Well, it's going to take us 50 years. Well, not 50, but it's going to take, I don't know how we would immediately know. I mean, how would we know if the tests were successful? You know, I guess it seems intuitively obvious to me that when you have incredibly porous materials, they're going to absorb water and increase the likelihood of freeze thaw, leading to some more deterioration. Okay.
Right. I just remember seeing a chimney that just exploded in that kind of condition, and it was a matter of humidity inside the chimney, and it was an extreme.
A chimney necessarily, I guess, a chimney very likely wouldn't have operable HVAC equipment for the sole purpose of removing humidity, ambient humidity from the interior.
But it had moisture coming from inside.
Well, and you know, I think I have noticed a good deal of effervescence on the inside of City Hall brick, particularly in the lobby area, particularly above these windows. As a matter of fact, I think we observed that when we were doing some of our inspections. Okay. Once again, the effervescence is on the inside, which is totally consistent with a very porous wall, very consistent with HVAC. You know, it's kind of interesting to me whenever you have really good dehumidification equipment on a day like today, well, it'll suck the moisture right through the wall. I mean, from the outside to the inside. I mean, that is so obvious, and it's happened so many times. That's why the paint peels off the wall of the interior of, like, say, the Buzzkirk Chumley before they really did the masonry sealers on the outside of that building. You know, there was like, you know, I guess I shouldn't have used that as an example. I was just involved in that personally. And so, but regardless, one of the things I always see is effervescence on the inside of buildings when there is no barrier to moisture anywhere between the outside and the inside. And so we saw that at City Hall. So that kind of leads me to believe that it's a water from the outside problem. Okay, number two, we don't see any effervescence on the outside of the building necessarily. That would be what would be expected if you have too much moisture on the inside. Okay, we don't see any steam or condensate buildup on the inside of the windows. Once again, would lead us to believe that there's not a moisture problem on the inside. Okay, because we know we have HVAC equipment that is operable. Okay, we have visibly seen the porosity of the brick. If we were all standing there on the man lift, this would be so much easier of a explanation because it's intuitively obvious to the casual observer. I mean, it is a porous surface. There is no question. You can see the little pinholes. And so, you know, I guess I can't imagine that we could, by mere application of a sealer, I can't imagine how we could possibly accidentally accelerate deterioration. It can only help. I can't imagine it could hurt. It certainly can't make it worse. It's accelerating. It's getting worse. It's going fast. If we don't do something soon, we're really going to be sorry.
So I think, you know, my view of this is the best case, how this should typically play out is, you know, the city would, or whoever owns the property would pay a independent expert to examine the masonry, and they would come up with a list of issues and solutions, and then the city would look to bid out that work to fix those issues. I think kind of what happened here is, you know, we want to do some tuck pointing and fix some structural issues above the window, and then the masonry sealers seem to be kind of an afterthought. Oh, hey, we need this too. And I think,
no, I don't want to interrupt, but you hired me specifically as a structural engineer to make recommendations on the repairs of the masonry on the building, and we did so. We identified the areas that we felt needed to be tuck pointed. We identified the areas that needed to have their the angle lintels replaced, and we identified the areas of the building that needed to have sealer applied to it. Period.
Okay. So, so the recommendation of the, I guess, First Masonry, who's doing this work, is to do those three options. You know, and then
I have one quick question to add in is, how much of the face of the south side is spalding? What percentage?
We haven't actually measured the percentage of brick that is spalled off. What we went by is observations of brick chips at the base of the wall at the end of the winters.
Right.
And the south side, you know, is literally littered with chips of brick.
To answer your question, the bricks, I mean, it's not all like they are, they were not totally homogeneous when they were produced, okay? So therefore, there are slightly different colored units which have slightly subtly different material compositions and so forth, okay? So the spalling is not localized to one small area like we saw on the east side or right around the scuppers. The spalling is just, it's totally, I would say random. It's as random as the material properties of the bricks themselves. I mean, you know how, okay, we're gonna stand at the wall, we're gonna see some that are light red, some are dark red, some are iron spots, some are beige, some are whatever. And I'm exaggerating, I'm hyperbolizing the differences in color, but there are subtle color differences, right? Okay, that implies subtle material property differences. Those subtle material property differences has resulted in some spalling and some not. So, you know, as far as how many, if we counted a patch of 100 bricks, 40 have spalled, but it's just a total, just a random, I mean, just, it's not all localized together. It's scattered very randomly, you know, across the face of the wall, but, you know, a lot. It's a high, the percentage is high. Okay, the ones that haven't spalled are still porous. I mean, they've all been exposed to weathering. Okay, some of the weathering, just due to the nature of the unit itself, weathered more aggressively. And so the faster they lost their face, the more likely they were to absorb water, be exposed to freeze-thaw cycles and spall off a little chunk or a little chip. And so, you know, the ones that haven't spalled are ready to, you know, and the ones that aren't quite ready to are getting pretty close to being ready to. And so it's just, you know, they've just all gotten to the point where, you know, the shiny, hard, water repellent face is gone from all of them. Some are worse than others.
Also, I want to apologize for our audio problems. We're doing it at this my house, and I didn't realize John was allergic to my cat. So we had to move out on the front porch, and we've got some noise issues.
Sorry about that.
One more quick question. Now that we've all been totally tuck pointed again, that won't completely stop our problem. The tuck pointing isn't going to stop the brick from spalling. Is that I'm getting that?
Yeah.
I guess I'm sorry, I didn't hear the whole thing. I think you're right. The tuck point won't stop the brick from spalling at all. No.
Okay.
But it does stop a significant amount of water from entering the wall itself, getting soaked down in all the middle of the wall, if you will. And I mean, that in and of itself, that causes problems. I mean, that will lead to premature deterioration in and of itself. So I guess on one hand, it would be kind of pointless to do one without the other. If we tried to not tuck point, but yet just apply a sealer, well, the sealer isn't capable of plugging up all the holes of all the missing mortar. So merely a sealer, yeah, a sealer may reduce the porosity of the brick, but a sealer in and of itself would not cut down the amount of water that comes in the wall, okay? And I guess the flip side of that is, gosh, the best tuck point, the best 100% grind out tuck point job would prevent the water that was getting in through the missing pieces of mortar, but it really wouldn't do anything to address the issue of the brick spalling. So it's kind of really, in my opinion, you're really wasting your time if you don't do both.
All right, thank you. Ernesto, do you have any comments?
No comments, thank you.
And Chris, have you got any additional comments?
I'd hate to be wrong, but I hear an expert really clearly saying what he sees. I want to hear what Connor thought the National Trust had looked up on what was their report on this kind of thing?
When you read guidance on applying this water sealant to masonry, generally they advise to not do it unless you've identified a specific problem that water sealant will address. I didn't know that the Umphress Masonry had identified that the brick was very porous, and the only way you could prevent, this freeze-thaw spalling was to coat the brick with a water sealant. I wasn't aware that was the problem. Now we've heard it. I think you can take that into consideration. When I reached out to the professional community, I didn't provide the assessment that Umphress has provided us, or Mr. Crane provided us today. So they basically said, check for these other things first before you go slap some sealant on a brick building. I think what Mr. Crane is saying is that, it's not efflorescence, it's not these, internal issues of the building, that in his professional opinion, it's caused from external, water coming in and soaking into the brick. I think you can take that for what it is. However, I don't know Mr. Crane's, what we really need a historic masonry expert. That's who should have been consulted for this building. This is City Hall. This is kind of really a focal point of historic preservation in Bloomington. And, maybe it'd be worth getting another opinion before putting something like sealer where we really don't know the side effects and, putting it on the brick. That's just an idea.
Hey, no problem. I'm sure there are people who are more knowledgeable than myself. Now, just as a little caveat here, just to give you a little more background, hey, I'm usually not in favor of sealers. And here again, we work primarily with the limestone industry. I'm not going to kid you. Well, there's just a lot more limestone in this area than there are brick. And so that's just the nature of our work. And so the majority of the time, I will actually seriously dissuade anybody from applying a sealer to limestone. Well, and almost any masonry, because most of the time it does more harm than good. Okay, the out of the factory, and I realize it's not a technical word, but the shiny hard surface is really the primary line of defense against any kind of weathering, right? And so if there's any kind of a surface intact, no, sealers do bad things. Okay, they do trap moisture in. They do have the propensity to cause some other issues, like discoloration, particularly on limestone. And for that, I'm always, really kind of hypersensitive to anybody mentioning sealers. Hey, I don't try to use those in my own place, because gosh, once you start it, you've always got to do it. If it weathers, you'll never get it applied in the same, even fashion to where it'll always be a visual subtraction from what you're looking at. I get all that. Boy, in this case though, when it gets to a point when the stone gets so old and so porous, you've really you have no other choice. And so that's kind of how I see it on this one is, I just don't see, I totally appreciate the significance of City Hall and what a cool building. I don't want to see it deteriorate and go away, and it's irreplaceable. I get that. How could you? So that's even more why it's so, and it just seems to me to be so logical and so obvious of a choice to recommend some sort of a sealer, and it's just because of I just feel if you guys had, and I encourage you to walk up and look, it's more pronounced the higher. We were up on the man lift, but the situation's similar down low. Just look and see how porous the brick are. It's just it is just visually obvious.
Is it a breathable sealant?
Yes, it is.
So humidity could come from inside and go out.
Yes, it'll allow water vapor to come out. It's kind of like Gore-Tex fabric. It'll allow water vapor to come out, but it won't allow water droplets to enter.
Yeah, that sounds sensible.
Okay. Any more thoughts or comments?
Anything else for me, I'd just be repeating myself.
All right. So we will allow them to go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like there's no real opposition or concern to putting the sealer on City Hall.
I want to thank Connor for bringing this up.
Yes.
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
We have to do a motion.
All your help tonight. Thank you. All right. We have one more item on our agenda. And I think we'll probably make this a fairly quick one.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that the 2020 National Alliance of Preservation Commissions Forum is usually a big conference. They hold it once every 2 years. It was going to be in Tacoma. It's now going to be virtual, which makes it really accessible to us. So no one here is going to go to Tacoma. But these are there's some really great items of discussion that are, and presenters and panels about preservation that I think are very relevant to our commission and our circumstances in Bloomington. It's $100 to attend. There are scholarships available. I sent everybody a link before the meeting started, so check your email. You can apply for the scholarship. Since we are a certified local government, we have access to those scholarships. So you can essentially go for free, and you can just tune in and tune out and attend whatever session you need to, or whatever. So it's really flexible. I don't see any reason why you guys can't take this opportunity to learn a bit more about historic preservation and some of the issues in this field. So I'd highly encourage you guys to at least apply for a scholarship. If you can't get one or you're denied, tell me what topic you want to watch, and I'll be at City Hall streaming most of it all day long in this lemon room, or we can move over to the McCloskey room if there's 5 of us. I really encourage everybody to attend that if they can, at least 1 or 2 sessions they find of interest.
It takes 5 minutes to sign up. I haven't heard back yet, but I did ask for the freebie part, Deterioration. So
yeah,
I think that probably everybody who were to sign up for it will probably get in without having to pay for the program, and it does look very interesting. I don't know if in the back of our packet, Connor has included the different stuff that's going to be taking place during this conference. So it looks pretty cool.
So take a look at that, and maybe it'll encourage you to join. That's all I had there. Anyway, so
that's it.
So commissioner comments.
We don't have any old business, thank goodness. Any commissioner comments?
I'm tired.
I just want to say thank you to everybody. I'm glad everybody is very willing to share views that don't necessarily agree with everybody else.
Quick staff comment for you. I was just going to let folks know this is my last meeting in a hand capacity. So I have enjoyed sitting back most of the time the last few years. So keep up the good work, everyone.
Can we ask what you're going on to there?
I am going to IU, so I'll be teaching full-time at the business school.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
We're going to miss you, Eric.
Yep.
Absolutely.
We've given you stories to tell.
Yes.
Teachable moments.
No charge.
Yeah. Any other comments? All right. We don't have any public comments, do we? Hearing none. No announcements, so let's adjourn.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Proud to be on this group.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.